Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Today kicks off Nurse Appreciation Week, which runs from today through the 12th of May. Obviously, the 12th of May being the 200th birthday of Florence Nightingale, the mother of modern nursing. And never at a point in our history, I think, in my view, or at least in my lifetime, have nurses been so important to our daily life and getting us through this horrible, horrible time period. And it was just another one of those moments where leave it to Trump to screw up a perfectly good day, because he had the nurses come into the Oval Office today for the nurse appreciation ceremony. And one of the nurses was asked, how are conditions? And she was very honest. Look, it's sporadic. There are places that don't have the proper gear that we need, that don't have the proper PPE. And Trump contradicted her because everything's perfect. Everything's fine in Trumplandia. And it's just one of these weird kind of moments where nothing we see come out of this administration is believable. It's all got this kind of, and I've said this before, this self-help guru kind of positivity that, we can't talk about anything bad, and anything bad that comes up, we've got to destroy and discredit, while pushing this false narrative that we're doing a great job. And that was highlighted today by the press secretary, Kayla McEnany, who, and this is, again, one of those moments where you go, what are you talking about? She said that they're basically going to stop doing testing. We don't need it. Don't need the testing because, we'd have to test them again because they could get infected in an hour. And which is interesting because in the White House, they test those people frequently. Do you know who they don't care about? You, me. They don't care about the quote unquote essential workers. They could care less about that. They'll throw a few pennies and some praise, but to actually do what's needed, what's necessary to keep people safe, it's just not there. So am I surprised that the press secretary came out and was actually honest for a change that they were not going to do that testing? Because if we do the testing, here's the secret. If we do the testing the way we're supposed to, the 1.2 million cases that we have now will probably quadruple. In fact, the administration's own report said that expect 200,000 cases a day in June. Expect an explosion of cases to happen and expect about 3,000 people to die each and every day. So that's basically a 9/11 every single day from June going forward. I mean, stop and think about it. They don't want to talk about the bad stuff. Can't do it. So we're going to hear a lot of attacks on the numbers. We're going to hear a lot of attacks on who's sick, especially on the dead numbers. We're going to hear tons of attacks on that. Trump is going to get the Sharpie out. We know that's coming. We know the revisionist history is coming, the alternative facts. We know this is coming. And again, what's interesting, again, today, and this is one of those things where, the administration never stops throwing stuff out there. A reporter asked Trump today about the case going to the Supreme Court. I guess today is the last day that the administration could modify its position on the Affordable Care Act before it goes to the Supreme Court. And Trump doubled down, said, look, we're not doing anything. We're going full steam ahead. We're going to go after Obamacare. We're going to terminate health care, he said. He said Obamacare is a disaster, but he claims he's run it very well. So it's one of these weird moments. It's a disaster, but I've done it very well. He said it was a disaster under Obama. It's very bad health care. What we want to do is terminate it and give great health care. And we'll have great health care, including pre-existing conditions, 100% pre-existing conditions. But we've already killed Obamacare, pretty much killed it, because they got rid of the individual mandate. We've talked about this before. We've known this is coming. We've seen this coming. We've seen this on its way. But the fact that he came out and said, look, We want to terminate healthcare. We want to destroy what little you have. We want to take it out. We want it gone. Is one of those things that's just incredibly, incredibly scary to me. Now, he's got this, again, self-help guru kind of positivity that we're going to come up with this great plan and it's going to be really cheap. It's going to cover everything and everybody. It's going to be utopia. And it'll be really cheap. My question is, if you have this plan in this moment, when millions of people are worried about losing their health care, because guess what? 30 million of them are going to probably lose it here, and if not already, very soon. How about you roll that great plan out? How about we bring it out? How about you put it to a vote and we move forward on it? And how about, where were you for the last couple of years when you had the chance? This is the thing that's driving me really crazy about this administration, because immediately I'm getting his minions who are saying, see, look, we're going to have a great healthcare system and Donald Trump's going to be the guy. I'm going, well, why is he waiting? He can have Mitch McConnell move forward on a piece of legislation that would move great healthcare through. And if it was really great, if it really did what he said, covered everybody, covered pre-existing conditions, was really affordable and was high quality, I don't see why it wouldn't pass. Problem is that plan doesn't exist. There's no silver bullet. There's no magic. Policy's tough. It's easy to sloganeer. It really is. It's a lot harder to actually govern. And we're seeing that out of this administration. They have done a really, really poor job. And now we're, again, my problem with this administration is you can believe nothing from one day to the next. Remember yesterday, they're winding down the coronavirus task force? Going to wind it down because, well, it's almost over. We're on the backside. It's all going to be fine, well, and great. Today, they've now flipped back the other side. It's going to continue on indefinitely. And you go, at some point, do we not stop? Do we not say, next? I mean, this is my problem with this administration on every level. You cannot believe anything. And look, we're in a moment of real danger. People are waking up every day, showing up to jobs, not knowing whether they're going to get sick or not. And we've heaped these great titles on them. They're essential workers. They're frontline heroes. But we haven't seen employers do enough to actually protect them. And what have we seen the administration do? Well, in one executive order, they've shielded the meatpacking plants and the production plants from any liability. So what's to stop them from doing nothing to protect their workforce? Because they're no longer going to be liable. And they've also floated the idea of extending that protection to all workplaces. That means you. That means me. That means all of us. So this is one of those times where we've really got to pay attention. And I would, real quick, I think I got to point your attention to the numbers. Because right now we're well over 1.2 million people infected, and that number, I believe, is really low. Because, again, we haven't done the kind of testing that other countries have done. You get Trump and his sycophants saying, well, we've done more testing than anyone. As a percentage per capita, we've done a pathetic amount of testing. In fact, the Harvard Global Initiative said, look, you've got to do 20 million tests a day in order to throw this economy back open. And you have to do contact tracing, and you have to do all of the things that we know work. You can't just, we're going to not pay attention anymore and hope and wish that it goes away. That's not going to work. But we find out today that the Trump folks are now looking at that 72,000 number they claim is way too high. There are people on that list who didn't die because of, and we're going to get to this. We're going to eventually figure out how to whittle that 72,000 number down to a couple hundred, to where this was all a big hoax and it was all the Democrats' fault. And expect it. This is the messaging, because he understands how bad this is for him come election time. And I think you need to remember, come election time, exactly where we are. And exactly every step of the way, the vacillating this administration has done. The back and forth, the deflection, the not taking it seriously, and, well, the ignoring. We now know that our government knew back in November that this was happening. They knew for certain in December. They did nothing in January. They did nothing in February. And here we are, and expect it. Once they say go and swing the doors back open, well, we're going to see massive numbers of infections. And I point to Georgia right now. Because you remember Brian Kemp was out there saying, we're going to swing the doors open. I'm going to do what Donald wants to do, and it's going to be great. And then Donald threw him under the bus. What we're finding out right now, evidently the numbers are skyrocketing. In fact, yesterday, he was on a radio program in Georgia saying that the medical system in Gainesville, Georgia, was under significant strain, that their numbers are going up, that the infection rates in Gainesville, Hall County, and nearby Habersham County are now in the top 10% of counties statewide. Guess what? It's getting worse. And expect this to happen in all of the states who didn't heed the warnings and didn't protect their workers. It's that simple to me. And as I've been saying all week, the reality is you want to protect yourself, you want to protect your coworkers, a union is the best way to do that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Peyton Corbett's going to be here to share some thoughts on what Boston workers are doing to help keep themselves safe in this time of crisis. Going to take a quick break. Stick around. Right back after this.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. That was the day President Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued Executive Order 7034, establishing the Works Progress Administration. The WPA employed millions in public works projects during the Great Depression. As many as 8.5 million Americans worked for the WPA at some point between the years 1935 and 1943. At its height, over 3 million Americans were working WPA jobs. These jobs included the construction of roads, bridges, utilities, and parks. It also meant the construction of new schools, libraries, public buildings, and housing. Many WPA jobs also employed musicians, artists, and writers in literature and art projects. The program's goals were to provide one job to every household suffering long-term unemployment. Some of the most famous projects included LaGuardia Airport in New York City, Blue Ridge Parkway, and the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Artists like Jacob Lawrence and Mark Rothko were employed at the Federal Arts Project. Historian Eric Loomis notes that the Federal Writers Project began the field of oral histories with extensive interviews of surviving ex-slaves. The WPA also bolstered federal funding for school lunches. The program was initially criticized for underemployment of African Americans who suffered disproportionately during the Depression. But many black leaders later hailed the WPA as providing job opportunities to blacks and keeping race discrimination to a minimum, at least in the North. The right attacked the program as a hotbed for communists and a scheme to build Democratic Party patronage. By 1940, WPA projects shifted towards war preparation and defense-related projects. When the country reached full employment in 1942, the WPA ceased to exist by July of 1943.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you may remember, it's been several months since this story popped up that Donald Trump wanted to paint the border wall black because he thought it would make it hot. I'm not making that up. He actually thought that the black paint would absorb the heat and no one would want to climb over it because it's hot. And what we found out is that for $100 you can buy a reciprocating saw and just cut your way through his wall. But it's a whole nother thing for a whole nother day. But they're saying this could add $500 million to the cost of doing this at a time when there are working people in this state, in this country, who are struggling. You've got 30-some million people unemployed and worried about how they're going to pay their bills. And the only answer Donald Trump gave the woman on Sunday was, hey, you'll get another job. It'll be a better job. It'll be great. You'll love it. It's just crazy stuff. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on where we are, where we're going, and how we keep ourselves and our coworkers safe. I've asked Peyton Corbett to come talk with us. Peyton is the trustee and business agent for Teamsters Local 122 there in Boston, Massachusetts. Peyton, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
So, I'm looking at this, and we've been talking to workers all week and for the last couple about how we make sure that we keep people safe. And I know you represent an awful lot of beer, wine, and spirit workers, the folks who are keeping our vice so that we can stay somewhat tolerant of what's going on. What's going on with you guys?
Yeah, so, beer, wine, spirit workers, brewery workers in Massachusetts have been deemed as essential workers. And in most other parts of the country, they have. And people might debate whether they're essential, but I definitely think that's an essential service, both for enjoyment and also there's folks that have dependencies and all that kind of stuff. We don't want people making bathtub gin or anything like that. So yeah, our workers have been out there on the streets and on the roads, in warehouses and in breweries, delivering beer, delivering wine, delivering hard spirits to liquor stores or as we call them here in New England, package stores or packies. They've been out there pretty much every day since this started, keeping the shelves stocked, keeping people's thirst quenched.
So obviously those workers having some bit of a voice are trying to figure out how to keep themselves safe. What are you doing to help keep them safe?
Yeah, I saw my friend Jesse Case on your show last night. And like Jesse said, most of our members, they want to be out there working as long as, they have safe conditions to work in. And if the company is doing the right thing. And I got to say, I have to give credit to some of our employers. They really are. They have stepped up and they are doing the right thing. It's not all the time that I can say that, but in this instance, they have. They're doing things like staggered dispatch times to keep a minimum amount of people in kind of the delivery areas or the dispatch areas. They're doing temperature checks as when people walk in. There's hand sanitizers and masks being given out. For our beer truck drivers, it's 99% of the time it's a two-person truck, a driver and a helper, and the company actually went out and rented, I believe, about 15 Hertz rental cars. So between the rental cars and some other company vehicles that they have, so they don't have two bodies in the truck at the same time.
No, I mean I was talking about this yesterday. There's a way to do this. There's a way to do it right. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take some thought. It's going to take some moving things around. It's going to take some thinking of, this isn't how we've always done it, but we've got to figure it out. But I think it can be done if you just, take the time to try and think it through.
Absolutely. And, if people don't have a voice in their workplace, then there's no one except maybe one guy squawking about this kind of stuff. Our workers have also been getting added pay, whether you want to call it pandemic pay or hazard pay or hero pay or whatever. We have in the Teamsters Union, we have a brewery division, and the head of our brewery division, a guy by the name of Greg Nowak, negotiated with Anheuser-Busch over a month ago for some special protections as well as some added pay for our members. So my members who work at an Anheuser-Busch distributor here in Greater Boston, they've been getting 10% on top of their gross for working during this. And then because of that national agreement, which then kind of flowed down to the wholly owned distributors, the distributors that Anheuser-Busch actually owns, a lot of the other distributors kind of followed suit. So it set kind of the area standard.
And that's one of those things that, didn't come about just because the employer was being good. It's because you guys negotiated that. That's because they had their workers had a representative to step forward and demand something. There was nothing just handed out.
Yeah, absolutely. And in contrast, it's a pretty strong industry around here as far as it being unionized. The majority of the wholesalers, the distributors, are Teamsters. From my local 122, another local called 653 in southeastern Mass, and local 25 also in Boston. But there's a few distributors and some small breweries or distilleries or cider houses which do some self-distribution,
Right.
which aren't unionized yet. And to the best of my knowledge, none of them are getting any kind of additional pay on top of this. And a lot of those places are pretty busy because people are staying home and they're drinking.
Sure.
And because they're not going out, some of their stuff, they're much smaller businesses, but they have much higher price points on stuff. You're talking, a 4-pack of a fancy IPA that sells in the store for $20. So the price points are a lot higher on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and the profit margins are a lot higher. And this is one of those moments, Peyton, where I've been saying for a while that the hope is that we as a working class realize that we are really essential. I know it's a nice title now during this moment, but there are no profits without our labor. So this is that moment where you start demanding a little bit of, hey, I need to, if I'm literally risking my life, I should be compensated as such. And for me, this is one of those moments where you look at these craft breweries and look, they've just sprung up everywhere. And you talk to some of the people who work in these places and there's some not great conditions. This is a time to address that stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. A lot of people who get into that industry do it because they like beer. Some of them are like home brewers themselves. So, they're doing something that they like and they enjoy, but it doesn't necessarily pay the bills all that well. And some of them see it as, a prestigious job, but there's that old saying, you can't eat prestige.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, as I said, this is, I think, one of these moments, and I've brought this up with a lot of the labor folks that I've talked to over the last several weeks. My hope is out of this crisis, we begin to really reevaluate the economy and reevaluate the worth of workers in this economy. Because, I go back to my grandparents' generation. As I've said a number of times, they came back from World War II, fought fascism overseas, only to have to come and fight it here. And in the process, what they did is they built the most prosperous working class in the history of civilization. They fought for things that we still benefit from to this day. I'm hoping we see that spark that they saw and took, and we move this forward so that our kids and our grandkids can look back and go, you know what, our grandparents left us something.
Yeah, it's been times like this throughout the history of our country that, after some of these big crises that we've had, we've seen booms in organizing, folks wanting to have a voice in their workplace. So, I've been telling some of my members when they're out on the road and they see some of the non-union workers out delivering, talk to them, see what their conditions have been like, what kind of safety precautions the employers have been taking. Are they getting any extra pay? And give them my number, have them give me a call, and we can sit down and try to elevate their voice.
Yeah. And that voice is really important, especially in a moment as deadly as we're in now. Because I've always said, and I've been a card-carrying member of the Teamsters Union for over 30 years now, and I've always said I've never driven a truck that was unsafe because I wouldn't do it because I had the ability to say no. I can't say that about all of my other truck driving friends. And this is highlighting, we're in a moment that highlights that ability to say no. That ability to say, you know what, I think it's an unsafe condition. I'm not putting myself, my coworkers, and my family in that danger. And this I'm hoping gets through to people who don't have that protection. So what do you say to people, Peyton, who are going, well, you know what, I'm a little leery about going to work. I'm a little leery about the conditions. What do you say to people who don't have the protection that I've enjoyed my entire work life and that I'm sure you have as well? What do you say to those people?
Well, I say give the Teamsters a call for one. I also say talk to your coworkers. That organizing. I'm sure being involved in this stuff for all these years. 9 times out of 10, organizing starts on the shop floor. So it's got to be workers talking with each other and coming together first And, you know, we're happy, like I said, to elevate that voice. We're happy to be a vehicle for them, but they've really got to get talking with each other and talking about what the issues are, talking about, you know, in non-union shops, everybody makes different pay, right? Like I've always worked in union shops, so I've pretty much always known what everyone else is making. And it's
written down in this little book.
Yeah, exactly. You know, talking to non-union workers, it's strange to me when nobody knows how much other people are making, and we all, you know, it's easy to figure out. The best workers aren't always getting paid the most, even though that's what
that's the meritocracy. We're led to believe there's a meritocracy when it's really not. And what we find, you know, and I've done some organizing over the years, what we find though is most people, their main concern is safety. It's the conditions under which they labor. It's treatment, it's dignity. And my problem with this moment right now is we're seeing so many of these companies who just want to swing the doors open, get people back to work, get the profits flowing without thinking about those conditions, without really, you know, giving people that say and that ability to protect themselves. And this is why I'm hoping that people will call folks like you and other unions to say, hey, look, I need help.
Yeah. You know, I have a friend who actually, he works at this small craft brewery. And he's like up until now, he's thought that the owners of it were okay. And, him and some of his coworkers were kind of getting together, and they were kind of unhappy with some of their safety conditions, the pay, basically the lack of appreciation, the fact that they hadn't seen their boss in a long time. So they had they probably saw the writing on the wall that maybe they were going to organize or something. So they called a town hall meeting, and they did something like this over a Zoom meeting, and just to, you know, retouch on how out of touch the boss is. The boss said he understands how these are such challenging times for everyone because he hasn't been able to go out jogging. His workers are going and working in a brewery, working on a can line in close quarters every single day. He's reaping the profits, and he's staying home in his house, and he is scared to go out jogging outside.
That is just absolutely incredible. And you're right, completely out of touch. But Peyton, I wish you the best. I appreciate you taking some time for me. Stay safe, keep the fight, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
All right, thanks very much.
Good stuff. Peyton Corbett, trustee business agent there with Teamsters Local 122 up in Boston. And look, I want this for everybody. I want everyone to have the ability to stay safe, to make a living, and to keep their family safe. That's simple to me. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.